Okay, I'll tell you. I know that because this is your tactic. This is what you do. What is a woman? I'll tell you what a woman
It
is.
shouldn't be controversial.
I'll tell you what a woman is. A woman is someone who has at least at one point in her life felt scared of a man.
Sorry?
But you guys never want to talk about
wait,
that.
hang on.
You guys
That's
never want
the
to
dumbest
talk
thing I've
about
ever heard.
that.
So any man who's ever felt afraid of another man is a woman?
No.
What are you talking
That's
about?
not what I'm saying.
This is exactly why you're wearing that shirt that says repeal. You should put the 19th under it. It's unbelievable.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Pull up a seat for this one because it got heated fast. So Piers Morgan sits down a panel that nobody expected to go the way it did. On one side, you've got Andrew Wilson and his wife, Rachel, walking in to defend motherhood, marriage, and traditional family life without apologizing for a single word of it. On the other side, you've got feminist writer Clementine Ford, ready to take them apart. And it's all going fine, tense but fine, until one simple forward question gets asked, and the entire conversation falls off a cliff. Trust me, you do not want to click away early on this one, because the moment everything unravels comes when you least expect it, and the ending lands even harder than the setup. While you're here, do me a quick favor and drop a comment letting me know where in the world you're watching from. I love seeing how far this channel reaches, and I read way more of those than you'd think. Alright, enough from me. Let's get into it.
What is it like being married to Andrew Wilson?
Well, it's pretty awesome. I mean, he's hilarious. He's a really smart guy. He's very charming. And most of all, he's a great dad and a great husband. And I share his worldview, so I would agree. In fact, I would say I would probably be the more bitter misogynist out of the two of us. If you really had to, pick one, it would probably be me. So.
Really? Why do you say that?
I just think that feminism has absolutely destroyed so much of what I hold dear in life, and it's held me back more than it's helped me. It's one of the reasons I started looking into the history and investigating it for myself. And I think it's just created a world where we now have a two-income economy, and for women like me who do want to prioritize motherhood, it makes it extremely hard. It just makes it financially difficult. I face tons of social pressure. Had my first daughter at 20, wanted to stay home. Everyone around me, even the so-called Christian conservative women, told me it was a terrible idea. You can't do that. You have to bring the baby to daycare. You're going to put yourself at risk. Your husband's going to hurt you. You're going to be abused if you don't have your own money and your own career. And I think it's backwards. I think it's the most inefficient, stupid thing we've ever come up with. And that in the future, people look back at the feminist experiment as a goofy time in history where we tried this wild experiment that failed miserably, and thank God it's over.
Wow. Okay. Well, Clementine Ford, I'm sure that you agree with every word of that, don't you?
Firstly, I'm very glad that you're happily married. It's great. A lot of women are not happily married, and they find it very difficult to leave marriages, particularly because of the financial strain. So good for you. I do think that your historical understanding of feminism is extremely skewed. The idea that somehow we've only created a two-income household because feminism has tried to destroy the world is historically inaccurate, in large part. Well, firstly, you're also talking about feminism from your very, and when I say limited, I'm not trying to insult you, but the limited perspective of feminism in America and the understanding of the economy in America. It's not taking into account the global reality of the fact that women have always worked, women still continue to work. Women, for the most part, produce the majority of the world's underpaid, if drastically underpaid labor. When you talk about a two-income household being somehow instituted by feminism, you're failing to take into account that even in America, the glamorization of this golden age of marriage in the 1950s to the early 1960s, which the marriage historian Stephanie Coots calls the long decade. This coincided with an increase in women in the workplace. So it's not as if there was this golden age where women where married women, weren't working. For a lot of that, actually, the labor that is required to support the middle class has always been relied on for poor and disenfranchised women, largely in America, Black women.
All right. Look.
For a start,
Let
me just finish.
We are going to speed things up a little bit.
And the economy the downturn in the economy, the boom that happened after the Second World War was unsustainable. It was a wonderful time between around 1940 to 1970 for white working class men in particular. And then it began to
But I have a
decline
question for
rapidly.
you.
One of the reasons why women had to go into the workforce was because
This
they
is what
had
we
to
call
help
woman
support their
prattle.
You have to understand something right away here. The most powerful person in this entire conversation is the woman everyone assumed would be the easy target. Rachel walks in, and instead of playing defense, she goes straight on offense. When Rachel said feminism destroyed so much of what she holds dear, and that it held her back more than it helped her, that is not a talking point she memorized somewhere. That is lived experience talking, and you can hear it. And here's the part that blows my mind. Rachel shares this raw story about having her first daughter at 20 and wanting to stay home, and the people who tried to talk her out of it were not radical activists. They were the so-called Christian conservative women around her, telling her it was a terrible idea. Think about that for a second. The pressure to walk away from motherhood had soaked so deep into the culture that even the people who claimed to defend the family were nudging her away from it. That is the part nobody wants to admit. Then Rachel drops a line I genuinely think will age incredibly well. She says people will look back at the feminist experiment as a goofy moment in history that failed miserably. You can disagree with her, fine, but watch what happens next. Clementine fires back that Rachel's historical understanding of feminism is extremely skewed. And I'm sitting here going, that is not an answer, that is a dismissal. When your only response to a woman describing her own life is to tell her she misunderstands history, you have already lost the human part of the argument. Rachel is not reading from a textbook, she is telling you what happened to her, and no amount of academic framing erases a real story.
families.
Okay, I have a question for you, Clementine. It's a very simple question, but I think it'll be an interesting question to ask you. What is a woman?
I'm not going down the path of debating trans women with you.
I didn't mention trans women. I asked you what a woman is.
Okay, I'll tell you. I know that because this is your tactic. This is what you do. What is a woman? I'll tell you what a woman
It
is.
shouldn't be controversial.
I'll tell you what a woman is. A woman is someone who has at least at one point in her life felt scared of a man.
Sorry?
But you guys never want to talk about
wait,
that.
hang on.
You guys
That's
never
the
want to
dumbest
talk
thing I've
about
ever heard.
that.
So any man who's ever felt afraid of another man is a woman?
No.
What are you talking
That's
about?
not what I'm saying.
This is exactly why you're wearing that shirt that says repeal. You should put the 19th under it. It's unbelievable. What are you talking about? A woman, anybody who has ever at one point been afraid of a man, it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Do you have an actual argument here?
Would you let me finish speaking, or do you
how
just
long
plan
is it going to
interrupt
take for
people
you
all
to
night long?
finish? How long is it going to take for you to finish?
Yes, do you really just invite people on your show to be interrupted like this?
Well, Clementine, look, with all due respect, we did do a bit of research into what you said about me in the past, so I think I'm entitled to give you...
So you already know what I think about that question, because I've written about you asking that question.
Yes, you have. In fact, you said, like all of the
So why would you ask it again when you know what my
I'm just
answer
getting
to
to
that
enlighten
is?
the audience who have no idea what you're talking about,
Okay.
or me. Like all of the bigots, that's me apparently, currently jumping on the transphobic shuttle to Ding Dong Station. Morgan wants you to believe this is about fairness and equality, specifically fairness and equality in women's sports. That was exactly what it was about. And the problem is, Clementine, with all due respect to you, the reality is...
I doubt it. I doubt it's coming with due respect.
I'll treat you with perfect respect, but your inability to just simply state what a woman actually is, particularly given 2 weeks ago in the UK, the Supreme Court made it very clear that a woman is a biological female. That's it. It's a scientific fact. The fact that you can't answer that is part of the problem.
I'd like to know, the thing is that I would like to know why you, in particular, are so obsessed with this definition of what a woman is. Firstly, how does it impact you in any way? Secondly,
I have a 13-year-old daughter.
As a woman,
I have a 13-year-old daughter. And if my 13-year-old daughter decides she wants to compare, hang on. You ask me a question. You ask me a question. I'm going to answer you. Well, if you don't want an answer, don't ask me a question. Here's my answer to your question. I have a 13-year-old.
You asked me. You won't let me answer.
I have a 13-year-old daughter. I have 7 nieces, right? And some of them are very.
Expert then on
so,
women,
if I may
guess.
answer your question. Some of them are very good at sport, right? The idea that they would one day have their dream of potentially an Olympic place or a Team GB place, whatever it may be, a world championship place, taken from them by a biological male, I think is completely outrageous. And by the way, so does most of the world now, which is why there's been a reversing, screeching U-turn on this particular subject. But I come back to my question to you. Your inability to say what a woman is, and yet here you are lecturing women on how they should behave as women, is completely perverse.
This is the moment the whole debate cracks open. Andrew asks one question, not a trap, not a gotcha, a simple question. What is a woman? And the pause that follows tells you everything you need to know. Because when Clementine finally answers, she says a woman is someone who has at least at one point in her life felt scared of a man. And I had to sit back, let that actually land. By that logic, every man who has ever felt fear of another man would qualify as a woman. The definition falls apart the second it leaves her mouth. And here is what people don't realize. This was not a slip of the tongue. This is what happens when you spend years avoiding a basic answer, because the honest one is inconvenient for the position you've built. Andrew does not even raise his voice. He points out that the UK Supreme Court already settled this, ruling plainly that a woman is a biological female, and he calls it what it is, a scientific fact. Then he lands the line that actually matters. Andrew says the fact that she cannot answer is itself part of the problem, and he is right. You cannot lecture an entire group of women on how to live while refusing to even define the group you are lecturing. That is when Andrew says her inability to say what a woman is, while still telling women how to behave, is completely perverse. And honestly, I don't know how you come back from that on a live stage. She showed up to school Rachel on womanhood, and she could not tell you what a woman is. You can feel the room shift.
I think that reducing women specifically to your biological deciding of what you think a woman is.
It's called science. It's their chromosomes. You have different chromosomes to me. It's not me saying that. I'm not writing.
I'm sure you're not the first.
I'm not writing the science.
I'm not the first person. I'm sure I'm not the first person to tell you about intersex people. So how do you?
I'm not talking about intersex people.
No. This is all wrong anyway. The intersex is not a third sex. It's not a third sex. That's ridiculous. There is no third sex. There's two sexes, male, female, categorized scientifically. Intersex is not a third sex. Anybody can look that up in 5 seconds. Total lie. How did you not know that, by the way? How did you not know intersex is not a third sex?
I didn't say that intersex with a third sex.
You did.
But
yeah, that's exactly what the implication was.
And intersex people can have a mixture of chromosomes. So if you present,
are you saying they're a third sex or aren't you?
If you present to the world as,
if they're not a third sex, then you have no argument here. Do you understand that? If what he's saying is, this is what is objective.
This is trans women.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
Why are you so obsessed with defining trans women? For a start.
Yeah.
No, everyone has interrupted me. Let me speak for a moment.
You just asked a question.
Let me speak for a moment.
You can't keep asking questions, Clementine, and then refusing to allow people to answer. If you don't want an answer, don't ask a question. The truth about the problem is feminists in particular, I've noticed, feminists have latched on over the last few years to this idea that if anybody raised any concerns about the way the trans lobby was trying to make things unequal, unfair, and unsafe for actual women, then they were immediately transphobic. I kept saying, I want trans people to have the exact same rights to fairness, equality, and safety as me or you. However, what was happening was women's rights were being eroded, so that things were not fair, they weren't equal, and they weren't safe. And we saw absolute parodies of this in the Olympics, in the boxing ring, where people who have been banned from the World Championships because they apparently reported positive for male chromosomes were getting in the ring and beating women up in the ring. And so a woman's going to die if this was allowed to carry on. So now people have stopped it. Now sporting bodies around the world have stopped it. But you, Clementine, I say this respectfully, are still flying the flag for this bullshit. And you can't even say what a woman is. And I just find the fact that you want to lecture women like Rachel on how they should be as a woman is completely perverse, given you don't even know or don't want to say what an actual woman is. I haven't said anything
to Rachel.
And just when you think Clementine might regroup, she reaches for the one card people always pull in this argument, intersex people, as if that quietly dissolves the entire category. But Andrew doesn't flinch. He says intersex is not a third sex, that anybody can look it up in 5 seconds, and he flatly calls the implication a total lie. And here's the educational piece a lot of viewers miss. Intersex conditions are real medical variations, but in biology they have never created a separate third category of human being. They are variations within the two, not a doorway out of them. So leaning on them to blur the definition isn't science. It's an escape hatch. Then Andrew closes the trap. He tells her plainly, if you present to the world as though intersex is not a third sex, then you have no argument left here. And she has nothing. Notice the pattern. Every single time she gets cornered, she changes the subject instead of answering the question on the table. What really got me was Andrew's point about how this conversation became impossible in the first place. He says the moment anyone raised honest concerns about fairness and safety for women, they were instantly branded transphobic. That is the trick right there. Shut down the question before it can even be asked. And it worked for years until enough people, including sporting bodies around the world, finally pushed back and restored basic fairness in women's competition. And then the closer. Andrew looks at her and says she is still flying the flag for this, and she cannot even say what a woman is. That is the entire debate compressed into one sentence. You came to teach women about womanhood, and you cannot name it. Here is what I want you to take away from this. Confidence is not the same thing as being correct. Clementine sounded certain the whole way through. Rachel and Andrew simply asked for definitions, for honesty, for one straight answer. And that was all it took to bring the whole thing down. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.